Mandy, my grandmother said calmly, yet every syllable struck like ice. Explain to me why there is an elderly couple living in the lakeside mansion I purchased for you. The entire Thanksgiving table froze. A sharp metallic clink echoed as my father, George, lost his grip on the knife in his hand. It hit his plate and bounced once before settling. I stopped mid-motion, my fork hovering inches from my mouth, pumpkin pie trembling on its edge. Slowly I raised my head. My grandmother, Dorothy Hanson, sat at the head of the table, her posture straight despite her age. Her sharp gaze cut past me, pierced my sister Ashley, and then swept over my parents like a judge surveying criminals. She had returned from overseas just days ago after years away, and something about her presence now felt different. Heavier, more dangerous. "Grandma?" I said, my voice shaking. What did you just say?" She repeated it without hesitation. "The lakeside house, the vacation home, the one I bought in your name 3 years ago to secure your future." The word sounded unreal. A vacation home? A lakeside mansion? I barely had $12 in my bank account. I'd been sleeping on friends' couches for weeks. "There has to be some mistake," I said, forcing myself to breathe. "I don't own any house. I don't even own an apartment. I was evicted last month." My grandmother's eyebrow twitched. "That's impossible," she replied. "When I returned, I went to see the property myself. I wanted to surprise you, but instead of you, an elderly couple answered the door. They told me they were the parents of Ashley's husband." My heart slammed into my ribs. She turned her head slightly. "Ashley, explain." Beside me, Ashley's hand shook so badly that red wine sloshed against the rim of her glass. Her eyes darted around the table like a trapped animal. "That's ridiculous," Ashley blurted out. "Grandma, you must have the wrong address. You just got back from traveling. You're tired." My mother, Sandra, quickly joined in. Her smile stretched too tight. "Yes, Mom. Jet lag can mess with memory. Let's not ruin dinner. The turkey is getting cold." "Enough." My grandmother's voice cracked like a whip. The room fell dead silent. "My memory is perfectly intact," she said. "The address, the exterior, the deed, it was exactly the property I purchased." She reached into her handbag and slid a photograph across the table. "This," she continued, "is what Kevin's parents showed me." I stared at the photo. It showed a grand lakeside mansion glowing under the sun. Standing in front of it were Ashley, her husband Kevin, and his parents, all smiling. I recognized the place instantly. It was the same house Ashley had once posted online, captioned "My new vacation home," during the period when I was working 3 jobs and skipping meals. "That house," my grandmother said, "belongs to Mandy." My ears rang. I pushed my chair back and stood. "Mom, Dad, explain this. If Grandma bought a house for me, why am I living like a beggar?" My father avoided my eyes. "This isn't the time," he muttered. "It's Thanksgiving." "No," my grandmother said coldly. "It's the perfect time." She turned to me. "Mandy, you truly know nothing about this, do you?" "I swear," I said, my voice breaking. "I've never heard of it. No house, no money, nothing." For the first time, pity flickered across her face. Then it vanished. She faced my parents. "You told me Mandy was mentally unstable. You said she couldn't handle assets, so you would manage the property for her." My blood ran cold. "What?" I shouted. "When was I ever unstable? I graduated top of my class. I worked nonstop. I never asked you for anything." "Mandy, calm down," my mother said quietly, eyes sharp with warning. "See? This is exactly what we meant." Something inside me snapped. "You kicked me when I couldn't pay rent," I yelled. "You told me to be independent. And all this time you were stealing from me?" "We did it for your own good," my father shouted back. "You weren't capable, so we entrusted the house to Ashley." "For your own good," I whispered, numb. Ashley suddenly slammed her glass down. "Stop pretending," she screamed. "Someone like you doesn't deserve a place like that. We were using it properly. You should be grateful." Grateful. That was when my grandmother stood. She walked over slowly and placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Mandy is right," she said. "All of you are rotten." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Come in, now." Moments later, the front door opened. A man in a dark suit entered, carrying a thick briefcase. "Mrs. Hanson," he said, "I've brought everything." My father staggered back. "What is this?" "This," my grandmother replied, "is the end of your lies." The lawyer opened his case and laid documents across the table. I wiped my tears and straightened my back. Then I laughed. Everyone stared at me. That's enough acting, Grandma, I said quietly. She smiled. Indeed. My parents' faces drained of color. You see, I continued coldly, a week ago, Grandma contacted me through Aunt Linda. She suspected her letters were being intercepted. I leaned forward. This dinner wasn't a family gathering, it was a trap. My grandmother tapped her cane. Sit down, she ordered my father as he tried to rise. This is just the beginning. The lawyer slid forward a document. Lakeside Manor, he read, was purchased by Mrs. Hanson under Mandy Hanson's name. However, ownership was transferred to Ashley Thompson for $1. $1. The date burned into my vision. 3 years ago. The exact moment my life fell apart. I looked up slowly. So this, I said softly, is where everything went wrong. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by my shallow breaths. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. For 3 years, my own family had systematically sabotaged me. Every rejection from companies I had qualified for, every closed door, every struggle with rent or loans, it was no accident. It had been orchestrated. My father's hands trembled as he spoke, almost inaudibly. Mandy, it wasn't supposed to go this far. We thought we were protecting you. Protecting me? I repeated, voice sharp. By stealing my house? By destroying my credit? By making me work myself to the bone while you profited? My mother, pale and sweating, tried to interject. Mandy, we only— Silence! My grandmother's cane struck the floor with authority. You will speak only when instructed. The lawyer, Mr. Watson, adjusted his glasses and began presenting the evidence. He opened a folder containing a series of bank statements. These, he said, sliding the documents toward me, are Mandy Hanson's account records. Funds deposited from her part-time jobs were redirected without her consent to another account under Mrs. Hanson's name. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. And these redirected funds, Mr. Watson continued, amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 3 years. That, combined with the fraudulent property transfer, constitutes embezzlement. Ashley, seated rigidly, went pale. Her hands clenched into fists, and I saw the first cracks in her facade. I didn't know it would, she stammered. You didn't know? I echoed. You willingly lived in my house. You collected rent from your own in-laws without my permission. You profited from what was mine. And now, 6 months ago, when Grandma returned, you forged a transfer to cover your tracks. Ashley's lips quivered. I had no choice. Dad said I had to. He said you'd never notice. I felt bile rise in my throat. My own sister, complicit in the theft, pointing fingers at our father. My father's face was red, his jaw tight. I turned to him, voice trembling with fury. All of you conspired to steal from me. Every rejection, every obstacle, it was you. You pushed me into poverty while living off my property. My father opened his mouth, but my grandmother raised a finger. Silence fell again. Attorney Watson displayed a forensic report on his tablet. This document, he said, highlighting the so-called transfer agreement, was supposedly signed 3 years ago. Our analysis of the paper and printer reveals it was actually created 6 months ago. Ashley's face drained of color. That's impossible. Not at all, I said, calm but cold. The moment Grandma returned, you panicked. You forged my signature, hoping to claim ownership and avoid exposure. But now, your lies are exposed. My parents tried to protest simultaneously, their voices overlapping in panic, but my grandmother raised both hands. Enough. I have seen enough of your deceit. You have manipulated, stolen, and lied. No more excuses. Mr. Watson continued. The handwriting analysis confirms with 99% certainty that Ashley Thompson forged Mandy Hanson's signature. Additionally, she falsely claimed guardianship and withdrew $1 million from Mandy's account under the guise of maintenance fees. Ashley's hands flew to her face, sobs racking her body. Prison! They're going to send me to prison! You were warned, Mr. Watson said sternly. Criminal charges have already been filed. Fraud, forgery, and embezzlement are all punishable by law. I felt a dark satisfaction in the pit of my stomach. Justice was finally catching up to the people who had made my life a living nightmare. I could feel the warmth of my grandmother's hand on my shoulder, a silent affirmation that I was no longer alone in this fight. Then I addressed my mother. And you, Mom. Every letter Grandma sent to me was intercepted by you. Every attempt at communication crushed. Every inquiry ignored. You built a wall between us, isolating me and making me vulnerable. How do you explain that? My mother's voice was a whisper. We thought you were too busy. I didn't mean to. Too busy? I interrupted, voice rising. I was struggling to survive while you were destroying my life. Every cent, every opportunity, every chance at stability. You controlled it. You made me dependent, powerless, and then laughed at my suffering, and you expect me to forgive that? She could not answer. My father's face was pale, lines of stress etched deeply across his forehead. He tried to say something, but my grandmother's glare pinned him to his seat. This is not about forgiveness, she said. It's about accountability. I took a deep breath, regaining my composure. You thought you could silence me. You thought I'd never uncover the truth. But I did. And now it ends. Ashley wailed, curling into herself. I only did what Dad told me to do. I didn't mean for it to get this far. You, I said, pointing at her, profited from my hardship. You took my property, exploited it for your gain, and then hid behind excuses. It's not your innocence that matters. It's the crime you committed. Attorney Watson then produced another document, the revised will. This, he said, holding it up for all to see, fully revokes the inheritance rights of George Hansen, Sandra Hansen, Ashley Thompson, and Ashley's spouse. Mandy Hansen is now the sole heir to the entire estate of Mrs. Hansen. A shocked chorus of protests erupted from my parents and Ashley. No, wait, you can't do this. We're family. Family? My grandmother's voice cut through them like a blade. There is no family here. Only those who have betrayed, stolen, and exploited. Mandy is the rightful heir. She has suffered at your hands, and she will receive what is just. I smiled faintly, feeling the weight of years of injustice lift from my shoulders. No mercy, I said softly. There is only restitution. Attorney Watson handed me a demand for restitution, including damages for emotional distress. The total, $2 million. My father's face turned red with anger and disbelief. $2 million? That's absurd. No, I said firmly, lifting my gaze to meet his. It is exactly what you owe. For every sleepless night, for every rejection, for every humiliation, every bit of suffering you forced me to endure. Ashley shrieked, clutching her head. Dad, Mom, tell her we didn't mean. It's too late, I said. The law, the evidence, and my grandmother's will leave no room for excuses. You cannot undo what you have done. You must face the consequences. My grandmother's eyes softened slightly at my resolve. Mandy, she said, you are no longer a victim. Stand tall. This is your victory, long overdue. For the first time in years, I felt a surge of empowerment. I had been invisible, silenced, and manipulated, but no longer. The room that had been heavy with deception now felt charged with truth. The lawyer closed his briefcase. All necessary legal steps have been initiated. The authorities are aware and the estate is secure. Mandy Hansen will be protected, and her property rights enforced immediately. Ashley whimpered into her hands. My parents sat in stunned silence. All the false confidence, the manipulation, the lies, they had crumbled into dust before us. My grandmother turned to me one last time. Mandy, remember this. Strength comes not from the absence of struggle, but from rising above it. You are no longer under their control. I nodded, finally allowing a deep breath to escape. I know, Grandma. I finally understand. And in that moment, the weight of 3 long, cruel years began to lift from my shoulders. For the first time, I felt a taste of freedom. The air in the room was heavy, filled with a tension so thick it almost seemed to press against my chest. My parents sat frozen, their pride shattered, their carefully constructed lies stripped away. Ashley, curled in her chair, no longer radiated the arrogance that had fueled her every action for the past 3 years. She looked small, vulnerable, a child caught in the storm she had tried to manipulate. My grandmother's gaze swept the room, sharp and unwavering. This table, she said, her voice echoing with authority, has witnessed betrayal, deceit, and greed. Let it never happen again. Mandy, the rightful heir, will reclaim what was stolen from her. I felt a strange sense of calm. Years of confusion, exhaustion, and despair had given way to clarity. I realized that the control they had exerted over me was gone. Every forged document, every stolen dollar, every humiliation, they were powerless now. Attorney Watson cleared his throat. There are still legal proceedings to finalize, but the transfer of property back to Mandy Hansen will be immediate. Any funds unlawfully redirected will be returned with restitution for emotional damages. My father opened his mouth as if to argue, but my grandmother's sharp look silenced him instantly. My mother's trembling hands were pressed to her lips. Ashley didn't even dare move. "Do you understand, Mandy?" my grandmother asked gently, placing her hand once again on my shoulder. "This is your life, your property, your legacy. You are no longer a pawn in their game." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yes, Grandma, I understand. I finally do." The lawyer continued. "Additionally, the forged document Ashley created 6 months ago constitutes fraud. Criminal charges will be filed. George and Sandra Hansen, as accomplices, are also liable. It is important that justice be served fully, so no one else falls victim to their schemes." Ashley's cries grew louder. "Please, it was only a mistake. I didn't know it would go this far. I just followed instructions." "You followed instructions to steal from your own sister?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "Do you understand what you've done? You turned my life upside down, all for a temporary gain. You exploited me while I was struggling to survive." Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, I was scared. I didn't want to lose my family. I didn't know what else to do." "I see now," I said softly, "that fear does not justify theft, deceit, or forgery. Actions have consequences, Ashley." My mother's voice cracked as she whispered, "Mandy, please, we didn't know how to manage it. We thought we were helping you. Please forgive us." I turned my gaze toward her, the calm that had settled in me steadying every word. "Forgiveness is not a currency you can demand, Mom. The time for excuses has passed. Your actions caused years of suffering and instability in my life. The restitution demanded is the minimum required to acknowledge that harm." My father's face twisted in frustration. $2 million is unreasonable. Surely we can negotiate." "No," I interrupted firmly. "This is not negotiable. The demand is a legal and moral obligation. Every hour of my struggle, every humiliation, every cent of my stolen money is accounted for. You will fulfill it, or criminal charges proceed immediately." The room fell silent. Even Ashley, who had been sobbing uncontrollably, seemed to comprehend the weight of what I was saying. My grandmother, still standing beside me, gave a subtle nod of approval. "You've spent 3 years under their control," she said quietly. "But now that chapter ends. Take back your life, Mandy. Build it anew, free of their interference." I looked around the room, the people who had caused me so much pain now reduced to husks of their former authority. My father, my mother, my sister, once pillars in my life, now diminished by their own misdeeds. The sense of empowerment was intoxicating, yet tempered by the years of suffering. Attorney Watson organized the documents, ensuring that every legal detail was in order. "Once these are signed and submitted," he said, "Mandy Hansen will have full legal control of Lakeside Manor and any associated funds. The restitution will be enforced and criminal proceedings will follow shortly thereafter." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and vindication. The nightmare of the past 3 years, the endless struggle, the exhaustion, the despair, was finally coming to an end. Ashley's voice trembled. "Mandy, I didn't want it to end like this. I thought I was helping. "You thought?" I asked, my tone cold, almost clinical. "You acted. You chose to steal from me. You chose to forge documents. You chose to benefit at my expense. Intentions mean nothing when actions cause harm." My grandmother stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder again. "Do not let them manipulate your sense of justice. They must face the consequences, not you. Remember, strength comes from standing firm in truth and integrity." I breathed deeply, feeling the burden of the past lift with each word. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel hope. Hope that I could rebuild my life. Hope that justice could finally prevail. And hope that the years of struggle were not in vain. The room remained silent, the weight of our confrontation lingering. My parents and Ashley had no words, no excuses left. Their empire of deceit had crumbled, and all that remained was the undeniable truth. Finally, I stood, walking toward the window overlooking the lake. The water shimmered under the evening sun, reflecting the possibilities that awaited me. "This house," I said quietly, "is more than just property. It's my life, my independence, my future. I won't let anyone steal that from me again." My grandmother's voice followed me, steady and unwavering. "And you won't, Mandy. You are no longer a victim. You are the rightful heir of your life and your inheritance. Take it with pride and strength." I turned to look at her, gratitude shining in my eyes. "Thank you, Grandma, for believing in me when no one else did, for seeing the truth, even when they tried to bury it." She smiled faintly, a rare softness in her expression. "I always knew you were strong. Sometimes it just takes the right moment to prove it." Attorney Watson collected the final signatures, ensuring the legal transfer was complete. The documents finalized the return of Lakeside Manor and enforced the restitution, making it clear that justice had been served. My parents slumped in their chairs, faces pale, broken. Ashley's sobs subsided into silence. The web of deceit, manipulation, and greed had been exposed in full, leaving nothing but accountability. I looked around the room one last time. "Let this be a lesson," I said, voice steady. "The truth always comes out, and those who exploit others will eventually face the consequences. My life begins now, free of lies, free of theft, free of manipulation." My grandmother nodded approvingly. "And remember, Mandy, you are never alone. Strength, integrity, and justice will always be on your side." I felt a warmth in my chest as I walked toward the lake outside the window, imagining the life I would build, a life of honesty, of independence, and of reclaiming every opportunity that had been stolen from me. The sun dipped low, painting the water with gold, and for the first time in years, I smiled with genuine hope. The past 3 years were gone, the nightmare was over, and now the future was mine to shape as I, Mandy Hansen, reclaimed my life, my property, and my dignity.